Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Dungeons and Dopamine. Ta-da! Hello, welcome to episode 45 of Dungeons and Dopamine. I'm Jess.
I'm Brie.
And we're here to put dopamine wherever you need it.
Your heart, your brain, or wherever else.
I just wanted to throw back to the early days.
We also have cocoa waffle tacos.
I really wish we did.
Right?
We should figure out how to make them. I've run out of things to talk to you about.
For the first time in her life, Jessica's speechless.
I'm trying to think of a good way to remind everyone that we have a Patreon. And another, a good way to also tell them that we release our episodes every Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. on the dot.
Because Wednesdays are the best days.
For real. Yeah.
Everybody needs a midweek pick-me-up. So it's like an extra cup of coffee for your Wednesday mornings.
Yeah. And and that's why we drink releases on Sunday. And we release on Wednesday. If you find yourself a nice Friday release show, you have a whole week covered.
That's perfect. So our friend Hank, that has been great at
oh my gosh, Hank, we love you.
Pushing our podcast. He has a podcast, or a couple. If you look up Red Chunk Productions on Facebook, that is Hank's stuff. He's got, I think, a couple podcasts now. Plus, he produced a movie once or twice. I don't even know anymore. Plus, he does a bunch of Twitch streaming and gaming, and he's kind of a funny dude.
He's great.
Yeah.
I've never even met him, and I love him.
He's okay. I have met him.
So we, this is one thing I wanted to talk about. So when we were at the Comic-Con, MuskyCon.
Because this is the first time we've met since Comic-Con.
Yes. When we were there, kind of part of our spiel, because it's hard to tell people about our podcast, truly. It's a very different kind of podcast, and we don't ever know what we're talking about necessarily week to week. We know what we're talking about, but
And after 45 weeks, there's been so many topics.
Yes.
And you know how our brains work. So the minute somebody's like, oh, what do you talk about on your podcast? I'm like, I don't know.
What's a podcast?
Never talked about anything.
Chocolate waffle tacos.
And I only know that because it's the most recent thing that I talked about.
Exactly. I'll forget this by Friday.
It was my spiel. I'd be like, oh, I talk about houseplants. Which has happened 3 times, and it was way in the beginning.
Well, we started so the day started. I mean, everything went amazing. It was a great so much fun. We loved meeting people, and we felt exhausted at the end, but so full,
yes.
Just happy, full. And I was telling people that it's sort of I'm the dark part of it, and then you're the fluffy, uplifting part of it, of the podcast. I'm usually I do something creepy or something informative, but it's usually darker or cryptids, and then she'll lift you up by telling you about houseplants or ADHD medications or fireflies. We're just filling in the blanks. And someone came up and she was like, oh, so you're the dungeons and she's the dopamine. And I was like, why have we never thought of this before? And the really ironic thing is, for the first time ever, during the week before con, I was putting some stuff together with our little logo, which is the little origami people.
About this.
And so my origami lady is the purple one, and Breeze is the minty green one. And mine is getting ready to stab her with an assassin's blade.
Which we didn't notice until the little origami figures were blown up a little bit. But it's totally fitting because you are the dungeon.
It was maybe one of the most valuable things that happened at con, because now I know exactly how to explain it.
Right. So thank you if you are listening and you are the girl that helped us realize that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you to all of our friends that came and supported us. We had people at our table all day long.
Oh my gosh, we're so busy. It was amazing.
It was one of the best days of my life.
And I hope that if you are someone who came to see us and you're actively listening now, I hope that you're enjoying it. And we thank you so much for it.
We've seen a pretty big increase on our traffic for our podcast and our social media pages. And that is really cool, you guys. We're very excited. We appreciate all of you.
Yes. And we just would ask that you keep telling people about us and sharing us. But we would love it if you would share us with your friends list on Facebook. Hank did that for us. That's one of the major things that, like, before con boosted us. It was incredible.
It's pretty easy to do. There's like an invite all friends button.
Yeah.
You guys should also know that even though we are not currently using any of it, we do create stuff for our Patreon.
Yeah.
And so if you ever get in a situation where you want to support a local podcast through Patreon, there is some bonus content on there that only Jessica and I have heard so far.
And it will I haven't been posting any, and that's just because we haven't had a lot of movement on Patreon, which I totally understand. Mm-hmm. But if we do have movement, we will start posting it. Yes. And we've had like some really fun ideas, and we have some like
newsletter ideas.
Yeah. So you want to know my favorite thing about con? I got to meet a stormtrooper. And
I thought you were going to say you got to meet the dog man in Michigan, and I was going to be really mad that you did not come get me for that.
I did talk to another podcast about the dog man in Michigan, and I have a theory that they might be talking about the dog man because of me. I might be giving myself too much credit, but...
No, I think that is 100% true.
But no, I met a stormtrooper, and I asked him if we could take a picture, and then I ended up spending like 20 minutes talking with him. He's a stormtrooper who goes and like visits hospitals and stuff. He was working at the con. He was invited to the con to work. Mm-hmm. And then he went and changed out of his stormtrooper garb into just like normal street clothes. I'm going to add that in case.
Then he was walking around nude, and it was weird.
And he brought me a Mandalorian helmet that he is currently working on. And so he puts it in my hands, and I'm super excited. And I'm like, I don't want to ask if I can put this on, because there's etiquette sometimes around this kind of thing. Like, you don't use a car guy's tools. I don't know any of the rules, but
that was good. Well, it's like you don't touch a pregnant woman's belly.
Yes,
you don't put on another person's costume.
So I really wanted to ask, but I didn't want to break that etiquette or protocol. I wanted to be respectful. He was a really nice dude. And so I was like, this is amazing. Thank you so much for showing me, like, do you have a Facebook or something where I can follow your progress with this costume? And he was like, well, I got some pictures, but I don't really post on Facebook. And he was like, this looks like it would fit you if you want to try it on. And I'm like immediately like on my head, turning to Ryan and being like, take pictures of me immediately.
If you have not met Jessica in person, you could tell from her face that she really wanted to try it on, but she was holding it back very well. But her face does tell all.
Yeah, I really enjoyed speaking to him, though. It ended up being a really cool like interaction. I don't know if he cares about our podcast, but
I am sure he's listening right now.
Hi, Stormtrooper. I'm
Maybe
so
not
sorry
right
I
now.
didn't get your name.
It would be weird. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time we've invited strangers to watch us record podcasts.
I've just locked him up here in this space, and he's just part of my home now.
He hangs out in this corner.
Oh, creepy. He's not listening anymore.
We're awful at this.
We don't make friends. We scare people.
We force friends.
You want to know what else is creepy?
Yes.
The Holy Family Orphanage in Marquette, Michigan.
I'm excited about this one.
We're not going to stray too far from Mackinac. As you know, this is pretty far north for us. In Marquette, Michigan, sits a set of nice and shiny apartments that opened up in 2018. The building in which these apartments sit was built in 1915 and obviously was built and opened up as the Holy Family Orphanage. It was a really good piece of history for the UP. mayor or whatever it would have been called back then insisted that it get built there. It was built with red clay bricks and sandstone. And at the time, it cost $100,000 to build, which, now I took this directly from a website, which I have listed on here at some point as well. Don't quote me on this. Sometimes I feel like these aren't accurate.
Fair.
But right now, this website claimed that it would be equivalent to $2,921,595 in 2022. So not even right now.
Right. Okay.
Which
that's a lot of money.
A lot of money. And I mean, I will say that was over 100 years ago. So
and it does seem like a lot of money even back then.
Yeah. It originally accepted 2nd to 8th grade aged children. That was originally kind of what they wanted, but it did very quickly expand into infants and older children.
Because if there's orphans, you have to take them.
Yeah, I mean...
No, that one's too young.
I don't like that one. It's old.
Keep it out of here.
It was also intended for white kids.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. But it did end up accepting Native American orphans. But this is a whole nother topic that I vaguely knew about, but learned a lot more about because of this. These Native American children were taken from their parents to integrate them into white culture.
Yep.
Which I put in parentheses, which sounds like our very first lesson here.
Go white people.
I'm going to expand on that in a bit, but in the 1960s, it did also take in Cuban refugee children that were allowed to leave Cuba by, what's his face? I didn't even write it down because he's a creep.
Right.
Castro?
Yeah, that sounds
Castro.
Right. This is okay. This is a really, especially in 1915.
Right.
This must have been a very desolate kind of like
Michigan.
hard place to get to. And they're like, what are we going to do with these Cuban orphans?
Let's
send them to the UP.
The UP in Michigan.
Where it's cold and awful.
America. Yeah. Really weird.
It's totally going to make them feel great.
It's very strange. I agree completely. So it could house 200 children. It had classrooms, bedrooms, laundry facilities, kitchen facilities, and a chapel. Obviously,
of course.
Holy Family. It was open from 1915 until 1981.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very, I guess, close to home for us because we were both born in the mid-80s.
Mm-hmm.
It was purchased in 1998 to become an assisted living facility, which it did not. And then it was purchased in 2008 to become a performing arts school, which it did not. In 2016, it did finally get purchased to become the apartments that it ended up becoming. They opened in 2018.
Okay.
Fun fact, the building now has 56 units, and they dedicate 14 of those to assist the formerly homeless.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is excellent. And I said OG chapel, the original chapel, is actually a community space for the residents.
Oh, nice.
So they kind of kept some of that cool history of it.
Yeah.
But of course, with a name like the Holy Family Orphanage, we can't have a cool, happy story. I wrote, this is why we can't have nice things.
True story.
So the Native American children that were stolen away from their parents, there were 60 of them total. And I wrote, it's just a bad way to start.
This is not the foundation you want to build your situation on.
It turns out that a lot of these kids were not voluntarily given to the orphanage. They were taken from their parents because they were injured in recent wars and could not take care of their children any longer. So
right.
Snatched away, or they were actually killed in the war, and so they had no parents. They also faced economic hardships because they were Native American and were paid way less than a white American. And anyway, Yeah. That, like I said, that's a whole thing I could have gotten into. Like, it was a whole topic I could have started.
That would really change the
Narrative
mood
I'm
of
going
this
for.
of this podcast. And for the rest of the episodes, Jess can just get angrier and angrier at the state of the world.
Starting in 1915 with the Holy Family Orphanage. It was run by nuns. It was a Catholic organization. I read a lot of differing stories. There were some really nice articles talking about how it actually was a pretty decent place. And of course, I read a lot of articles that said that it was not. It was said that the nuns would work the children all day, after school and after chapel. But the allegations go deeper than that, with adults now who were children then and in there who won't speak about the punishment from the nuns.
Oh.
From what I was able to piece together, it's like I said, a lot of this is scattered. I mean, it's a Michigan thing, so it's not like nationally known.
Right.
There was no shellfish Baggins here or anything like that. The nuns would publicly shame and paddle the residents in front of others to prove their point. They were forced to adhere to a really strict daily schedule, and a lot of the small children had chores that were too difficult for them.
Oh.
I said, for example, carrying heavy buckets to and from the stables, intense landscape upkeep, and things of that nature. And then, of course, if they couldn't complete their tasks, they were subjected to punishment.
This place sounds great.
Right? So there are two stories of children who they seem to be able to be proven historically. Now, some of the details of the first one can't be, but these are from yesterdaysamerica.com, and I'm just going to read them kind of word for word. One story that has been passed around, but only some details have been officially confirmed, are of a small girl who went out to play during a snowstorm. The weather quickly took a turn for the worst, and the girl became lost. One of the nuns had to rescue her, but by the time she got to her, the girl had developed pneumonia. She died a few days later. The nuns were still angry about her excursion out into the winter and decided to make an example of her. They left the body on display in the lobby, and every child was forced to view the girl to be reminded about what could happen to them if they disobey and go out in bad weather. Former residents have confirmed that the death did indeed take place. The nuns held a funeral for the girl in the basement. None, however, would say whether the body was actually put on display.
God, that's horrifying.
Yes. I also read an article that said that it took days for them to notify her parents. But I was like...
Wait a second.
I thought, oh, maybe it's one of those cases where the girl was given to orphanage because they couldn't help her or take care of her. Maybe it was like Depression era. But then I was sort of like, or you're lying.
Right.
Because I read it first and was like, oh yeah, that's awful. Oh wait. Other reports tell of a young boy who suffered a mysterious fate. The general consensus is that he either drowned or was beaten to death, and the nuns tried to cover it up. They reported his death as accidental and stored his body in the basement. Oops, sorry, go ahead.
So what I'm hearing is there are a lot of bodies in the basement.
Don't go in the basement. Okay. When former residents are interviewed, because in 1981, if you were 15 or whatever and you got released in 1981, you can still talk about that to this day. When they're interviewed, a lot of them talk about being treated fine, but being aware that there was abuse like that going on. So, what we're really all here for, the hauntings.
Yeah.
So it is said that, well, let me just read this. I don't recall what website this is from, but I think it's still from the Yesterday's America. As far as hauntings go, it's said that you can hear the moans and cryings of the children, which I hate.
My least favorite noise.
Yeah, exactly.
Creepy children.
People have seen ghosts. There's reports of a little boy in the basement. The medical table that he was placed on, he haunts. Like, he's around that when people see him. He is also seen as a green orb, which we've talked about.
Right.
I'm not a big thing about orbs. I mean, if you see an orb that's like like a wisp, I'm in.
Right.
But if it's a picture you get on your camera, it's a piece of dust.
Right.
Anyway.
Or a glare or a reflection.
Paranormal experts have investigated and stated that they hear children sobbing, and words such as help or hurt can be heard in abundance throughout the institution, but mainly in the area around the main stairwell. People who've entered the grounds have seen some ghostly apparitions, and some have documented photos of such. I have, of course, some ghost stories that I found on the interweb, which is always true.
You can only put it on the internet if it's true.
Exactly. That's the law. So these are just some, like I said, things that I've seen on the internet. Some of them are ghost stories. Some of them are stories like about the treatment in the orphanage itself. So here we go. We let you decide. 4 of my friends and I decided to explore the orphanage one night. It was a bit difficult to get into, but we eventually managed. We had to enter onto the second floor, just with how all the doors and windows were boarded up. Initially, nothing really happened. It was a neat place to see. Then we went down onto the first floor. As we were walking down the hallway, I looked to my left on a stairwell. That's when I saw it, a bluish-green orb floating there. After a moment, it quickly darted down the stairwell. I immediately asked my friends if any of them had seen that, and when they said they didn't, I told them that I thought it was time to leave. None of them wanted to, so we continued down the hallway. As we approached the end of the hallway, there was a large room at the end that looked like it may have been a classroom or something. Suddenly, I heard what sounded like children whispering coming from the classroom. I could tell that everyone else was startled too, and one of my friends said, "All right, it's time to go." After we were out of the building, we recounted what had just happened. All 5 of us had heard these whispers. If it was just me, I'd think my mind was playing tricks on me, but 5 of us heard it. He goes on to say that was kind of it, but that it's now an apartment complex.
But now people sleep there.
No.
No, thank you.
So this one goes on to kind of explains the building a little bit. Talks about how these people went in it in 2003. So very long time ago, long before it was even being renovated.
Mm-hmm.
So they're talking about how it's rotting and falling apart. But what I find really interesting and sort of awful to me is the layout of the building is very confusing. Many of the floors have the same rooms and same colors painted on the rooms. There are multiple stairwells and several small side rooms, dumbwaiter shafts, and an open elevator shaft. Many of the doors on the back of the building open up into space as there is no longer a fire escape. The atmosphere of the building is very menacing and depressing at the same time. Now we're getting to creepy stuff. Neighboring houses around the orphanage report seeing figures of children in the building, hear laughing or screaming, and reported different stories. Children were reported to have been beaten or killed, and one story is, and she goes on to tell the story about the little girl in the blizzard. Now this person is replying to the person that I just read to you.
Okay.
It's about 1 year later, so 2004, which ironically is when we graduated high school.
Lots going on that time.
Could have been us. I became a member just to talk to you about this orphanage. The orphanage was run by a Catholic organization from Wisconsin, and it is true about the little girl that died there. She is still seen playing outside the building. There is a little boy that has been spotted, and a nun as well.
Ooh.
I'm
like offended that the nun would haunt this orphanage and bother these children's spirits.
Right? Get away from them.
Leave them alone. They've suffered enough.
They talk about how actually it's a very cool looking building. It must have been a beautiful place when it was built. And then I've spent a lot of time in this building recently. I've researched it in all the archives locally. We've been in there, and when we heard We have been in there when we heard the children playing. We saw vapor that came at us and was just colder than a UP winter. Which is a very Michigan thing to say.
Right?
The last time I went in, we took pictures. Orbs were in some, mostly in the basement, but digitals can't be trusted, so we are going back with a 35 millimeter camera. Whatever. We went into every room in that building, and it's hard sometimes to even know what floor you're on unless you look out a window. We had a druid bless a tree that gave our two mediums a bad feeling. Actually, it scared them. When I took a picture of it there was a huge orb. The building does have a sad atmosphere and yet a sense of evilness to it. We heard a lot of rumors about it, ones that I won't dismiss. I have some reliable sources and we will get to the truth.
I want to know more about this tree.
Next week you're gonna love. I have a whole tree thing.
Yay!
This is another person replying, same.
That's all they say. Same.
Same. And I thought it was really pertinent to this.
The rest of yours are just people going, yeah, same. I agree.
Actually.
Right.
How did you know? It's like you read it yourself. I think this is the same person as the one I just read. I think she's replying to a reply.
Okay.
Is what I should have been more clear, but I didn't expect to have so much. All right. The only way to get into that building is to sneak in. The owner who lives in Arizona won't do anything with that building. The city has never even come down on him. This obviously is from 2004. It is clearly apartments now. Don't sneak in. People live there.
This is pre-2018.
I've been in this building several times now. I've had several experiences with paranormal activity. There's a medium in my group. Her and I, while we were in the building just snooping around, heard children laughing. Another time was the vapor. The smell of whatever the vapor was grossed us out so bad that it made the medium vomit.
Ooh.
Ugh. We know that there were kids that did rituals, but we have no clue what they were actually doing. We believed they may have opened a portal that didn't close. So we went in to find the evilness that has been sensed by all of us. We smudged ourselves, which I think has to do with like burning sage.
Yeah, it's like a sage stick.
Yeah. We took loads of pictures, but there were a bunch of teens in there as well, and we couldn't get any readings. The pictures did show a few orbs. She talks about that they're going back in, and that there's... we know there are children, but we also know there's something else that dwells in the orphanage.
Ooh.
Which I hate.
Yep.
Just
not
hate.
a fan. Not a fan.
This person talks about how their mother was a victim of this orphanage.
Oh.
She would only refer to it as that place. Her sister was placed in another area and they were not allowed to see each other.
Oh.
It's amazing that any of the children survived. That one was pretty short. I had a scary encounter here with a few friends. This was 7 years ago. It involved little kids laughing all around us and getting closer and closer to us as we tried to leave. A big green door that we passed by started rattling, and my friend turned around and saw a little girl in a white dress.
No, thank you.
Yeah. No.
No, that's okay.
Someone who says that they live here currently. Well, yeah, 5 months ago. Hi, if you're listening. She's saying that she thought she was losing her mind about the things that were happening in her house, her apartment, until she read a book or an article about this.
I know in Michigan we don't legally have to disclose any
Right.
hauntings, but I feel like there should be a requirement that if your apartment used to be a creepy orphanage, you should know.
And especially because, I don't know how to say it, but it was literally an orphanage.
Right. Like, it's not like these are all rumors and like there's just rumors that kids died there playing at a construction site or something.
Right. Imagine being that kid whose mom lived there and he's like, hey, Mom, I booked my own new apartment. You're going to be so proud.
Right.
She's not going in there. Like,
somebody goes out there for college and they're like, Mom, I got this new apartment. And Oh.
One just says, LOL, I live here, and the third floor is pretty haunted.
No biggie. Just FYI.
This person says that it's now apartments where I used to live. I'm thinking they meant they didn't realize what it was, and now that they had lived there and don't now,
Right.
and they're saying this. Anyway, the place is definitely haunted. You can hear walking and such, but the spirits aren't aggressive. They just exist there. I've definitely heard talking as well and seen flickering lights. Somewhere it was said the building has a depressing atmosphere, and it definitely does. You can tell that something seems off. It also has an odd layout. It doesn't really make sense. And I've only been on 3 of the floors, but each one is different. So I know that was a little spazzy. It was truly a little tough to find some information on that, but
I think you found a lot considering.
thank you. But anyway, yeah, so that's the Holy Family Orphanage. And as you kind of alluded to at the beginning, it's not a great name.
No.
You can't name anything. It's like naming a small dog Angel.
You just know
It's going to bite
that
you.
it's going to be the worst dog.
It's going to bite you hard.
Or baby.
Oh,
Or sweetie.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, you just don't do that.
No. You name them things like Ralph. So that you know they're going to be jerks no matter what.
You get obsessed with Lost and name every one of your animals after it until your daughter is 2.5 and names your dog Stella like every other dog in the United States.
Lord Fiduso approves.
You know, his death was really sad.
Sure was. Such a loss.
Do you know? I have nothing.
Oh, I have this one.
Okay.
Do you know what appears... No, I don't have this one. I was trying to like connect how the Dog Man only comes out every 7 years or on the 7th year, and there are only solar eclipses sometimes.
How about this? Are there eclipses with the moon as well? Like, do things go in front of the moon too?
I didn't research that.
Stop asking me questions I don't know. Okay. I don't even know if that makes sense. I tried to say, does the moon ever go in front of the sun?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it does.
Excellent. Do you know who loves the moon?
Who?
The Dog Man of Michigan.
Do you know what else he loves?
What?
Solar eclipses.
Tell me more.
Surprise!
We're so bad at it.
That one was probably our worst one, I admit. So my topic is actually like a week late, but by the time you are hearing this, the solar eclipse will have already happened. It is due to happen on April 8th, 2024, and I think this episode will come out on like April 10th, so I missed it by 2 days. So if you have not had the chance to hyper focus on some solar eclipse research because you've been busy, now here it is. This one got fun, and this covers both my science love and your conspiracy love.
Ooh.
So, on April 8th, there was a solar eclipse, and a solar eclipse is when the moon passes between the Earth and the sun, blocking out the sun. Sometimes the moon can appear larger than the sun, depending on how it is positioned, which then blocks the sun completely, resulting in a total solar eclipse. The eclipse on April 8th is a total solar eclipse in some areas of North America, starting at about 11:07 a.m. on Mexico's Pacific coast, and then it will follow a path through the United States and into Canada, and it'll end around 5:16 p.m. Canadian time. In the U.S., it will pass over Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and it will also hit some very small parts of Tennessee and Michigan. Interesting fact, the totality, so the path of the solar eclipse that will actually become fully eclipsed and fully dark, includes Wapakoneta, Ohio, which is the home of Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon.
Full circle.
Yeah.
Also, that's quite a name.
Right?
Neil. I'm talking about Neil.
Right.
That's quite a name.
such a Armstrong, very strong, very sturdy. The total eclipse actually
your
only
heart.
lasts about 2 to 3 minutes, and people describe the difference between 100% totality and 99% totality as completely different. So where we're at in Michigan, it's actually like I want to say a 99.1
Holy cow.
coverage. But if you were to make the drive to where it will be absolute, it is
Marquette.
No, you'd have to go south.
Dang it.
But I guess it is it's straight out of a sci-fi movie when it becomes completely dark from the solar eclipse.
Yeah, that sounds terrifying.
Yeah, like what we'll see here at 99% is completely different than what they'll see at 100%.
I guess that makes sense, but that's so hard to fathom.
Right.
Because if I cover up a light bulb 99%, it's pretty similar to if I cover it up 100%.
Right. The U.S. saw its last total eclipse on August 21st of 2017. Canada has not had a total eclipse or has not seen a total eclipse since February 26th of 1979. And Mexico has not seen one since July 11th of 1911. So
Wow.
while this is kind of like not that exciting in the United States because we already had one recently, in other areas of the world, and it's even on this same track of the one we'll see on April 8th, some of those places have not seen a total eclipse in over 100 years. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
This is the only eclipse in this century that will be visible in Mexico, the U.S., and Canada. And the next U.S. solar eclipse won't happen again until August 23rd of 2044. So 20 years from now.
I can't get past solar eclipse of the heart.
Do you want to sing it every time I say it? Because I did that while I was writing this. So eclipses in general are not that rare. There's actually like 2 a year because just how the Earth and the moon and the sun all rotate. But they usually aren't total eclipses. This year there will be another one on October 2nd, but it will only be visible on Easter Island, which I thought was interesting.
On Easter, that's not
like,
that's not close to
doesn't
that
make
date.
sense. On Easter Island, a small part of Argentina and Chile and South America, Hawaii, and a little bit of Antarctica. So it won't be visible to most of the world. NASA has made a pretty cool website, probably starting just before the 2017 eclipse, because science is amazing now and they can fully track the paths of these eclipses and predict the next ones. They also, and I'll link the website when this episode airs, even if you don't feel like you have to learn about eclipses right this second because the one just happened. But NASA also, because they can pre-plan and they know that these eclipses are going to happen, they use this time to really pick what science projects they're going to do with the eclipses. So this is a really good time for them to study the sun's aura, because you would not normally be able to see it except for when there is an eclipse. So for this one, they picked 5 special science projects to celebrate the occasion, which I just think is adorable. The first one is chasing the eclipse with NASA's high altitude research planes. So there's these super fancy planes that NASA has, and they're going to literally follow the path of the eclipse. They're using airborne imaging and spectroscopic observations of the corona, or the aura of the sun. There is going to be a listening party for amateur radio operators, which I assume is the transistor radios, like we talked about earlier. So NASA's going to be working with the radio operators during the solar eclipse. They will also be studying solar radiation's effects on the Earth's upper atmosphere layers and bringing the sun's magnetic hotspots into sharper focus. Just a word of advice: remember not to look directly at the sun while you are watching the eclipse. You can buy special glasses or get them at an eclipse event if you can find one. You can also make the pinhole box projectors like we probably all used in elementary school. The first havoc that I found regarding this eclipse might be a little surprising. It's the traffic that overwhelms the towns that are along the path of the total eclipse.
Oh.
So this was pretty unexpected back in the 2017 eclipse, and they are trying to prepare better this time around. But some of the stories I read said that basically the population of these small towns is doubled during these events. So a small town that has maybe 40,000 people will see another 40,000 people descend upon their town for the weekend before and the day of the eclipse.
Holy cow.
Some people said during the last eclipse that they were stuck in traffic for 10 to 12 hours after the eclipse happened because
I hate that.
nobody was prepared for the traffic. A lot of these smaller towns don't have the infrastructure, so they don't have the roads, they don't have bathrooms for all these people, hotel rooms, restaurants. It's like locusts coming in and like ravaging a town and then leaving.
Taking all the resources and then leaving in horrible traffic.
Yeah. Now there's all these people on the internet that are freaking out about this eclipse, but they're freaking out because they're worried about all of the people. A lot of people on the internet are like mad that people are freaking out about this eclipse, but they don't realize that it's because this is literally going to cause drastic issues in these small towns. The totality of it will happen like right around, I want to say 3:30 in the afternoon around our area, which is exactly when schools are letting out.
Yep.
So they've closed schools for the day because number one, they don't want all of these kids like on the bus or walking home or on their own with this eclipse happening because they're afraid all the kids will be like, oh, what's that? But also with so many people descending upon these towns, the buses might not be able to get through the traffic. They said during the previous eclipses, people would just stop in the middle of the road and get out of their car. So this is causing drastic issues just for these towns along the path of the eclipse. And it's not because they're worried that the world is ending. They're worried because they literally can't get through their town.
Oh my gosh.
So when I started researching, I was looking for conspiracy theories. The only one I was finding for a while was just this like back and forth drama from these towns that were literally like shutting down and going into like National Guard mode. And then a bunch of internet warriors that were mad at these towns for doing that because they thought they were doing it because they're afraid it's like the end of the world. But I did finally find the crazies. And this one has really brought out the crazies. They all seem to center around one conspiracy theory. But, I mean, this goes back to the beginning of Earth and eclipses. This is one of those occurrences that doesn't happen often. So especially before science was a thing and we knew what was going on, a lot of the old folklore, you know, eclipses were a sign from God or the gods, or some of them, like some of the old folklore talked about it's a dragon eating the sun and that's why it goes dark, or serpents. Even in modern times, we have, of course, turned this into all kinds of fun.
We can't have nice things.
Exactly. So a well-known TV personality who recently got in trouble for lying about things that he says doesn't happen or didn't happen has been claiming that the eclipse is a sign from God and that Homeland Security is going to hijack the event. I don't know what that means, but he's getting people riled up that, you know, we need to be afraid of Homeland Security for this. But the better one, so there's this whole conspiracy that started because the path of the eclipse in 2017 intersects with the path of this eclipse. So there will be a spot where they make an X, which has led into a whole list of all the powers that be using the letter X over the last few years. And how they were warning us that this event is happening. So they cited, you know, Twitter changed its name to X. When they talk about like disease control and planning, they'll all often use disease X. There is an XRP cryptocurrency. The craziest, longest Reddit post I found referenced like all the different movies and TV shows and video games that have come out in the past 20 years that either have an X in them or an eclipse in them or something going on. They then get into how the sign for Quetzalcoatl is an X with a circle around it, which is similar to the mark of the beast, and then they get into the symbolism of that. They are also saying, some people are saying that it will be exactly 6 years, 6 months, and 6 weeks between the 2017 eclipse and this eclipse. But I have also read that it is 6 months, 6 weeks, or 6 years, 6 months, 6 weeks, and 6 days. But then you get into 4 6s, and I'm not really sure what that means. And I also read a couple points that pointed out that math isn't even right. It's actually like 6 years and 7 months. Or you have to do the math very specifically to make it work. Like, you can't just go 6 years from this date. You have to start with like 6 days, and because obviously leap days and things will mess up how many days are actually between the eclipses. Also, the town where the exact intersection of the two eclipses occurs is named Makanda, which if you flip upside down says Wakanda, which apparently the Black Panther movie was based around the return of Quetzalcoatl, so they're claiming that as a connection.
No. Chadwick Boseman would be really disappointed in those people. All right, if we're going to conspiracy, let's talk about the Titanic.
This is where it gets super crazy. So, the Super Bowl this year had, an X, and then it was surrounded with a circle, so that is obviously a sign of what is to come. The movie Wakanda released on 11/11, and which symbolically represents 2 pillars. And in some depictions, Quetzalcoatl is shown standing between 2 pillars. So that is obviously a connection. The book that Obama read to children in December of 2023, called Santa's Gotta Go, the Santa makes an X with his arm in the guitar.
He's strumming the guitar.
Which connects to Quetzalcoatl because some connect Santa to Saturn, and Saturn is connected to Quetzalcoatl. I'm just going to read this verbatim because I can't make this stuff up, people. Something else that links the 2024 eclipse to the god Quetzalcoatl, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, by the way, I probably am not, is the dates between September 11, 2001, when the attacks on the World Trade Center happened, and the 2024 eclipse on April 8th. The days between those two events is 8,245. And if you divide that number by 2, you get 4,122 days and a half. And if you use the online calculator to count back 4,122 days, which is the exact midpoint between September 11th and April 8th, from the date of the eclipse on April 8th, you land on Christmas Day, 2012, which is the date that the Mayan calendar allegedly ended. I don't know how someone can spend the time to make these connections.
Okay, so, before we started recording, I was bragging about how excited I am that my family has eaten purposely at home for almost 2 weeks. And you know why I was excited about that? Because I'm really tired. And because I'm really busy. And because sometimes when I'm tired and we're busy, we just eat at anywhere else. If I say a place on specifically, people are going to tie it to a conspiracy. So who has the time to do any of this math? When I'm having a hard time eating at home.
Yep. Somebody replied to this thread.
Oh, they didn't.
And said, just so you know, here's another possible connection between Santa and Quetzalcoatl. The Bible verse, Zechariah 2:6 from the King James Version, says, Ho, ho, come forth and flee from the land of the north, saith the Lord. For I have spread you abroad as the four winds of the heaven, saith the Lord. Did you know that Santa frequently says ho, ho, ho? So that is obviously a connection to that Bible verse. So, the good news is the eclipse might be kind of cool.
I wonder, I'd love to know
what the bad
news
news is the crazies have taken eclipses and ruined them for everybody.
I'd love to know what some of the theories were that didn't happen for 2017.
Oh.
And how they justify. It reminds me of cults a little bit. And how did these people justify? But they do.
Maybe that'll be my next week topic. I'll spend some time researching maybe, I guess it'll depend on how well the research goes. I don't know if it will be a specific eclipse conspiracy theories that didn't pan out, because by this next episode I'll even be able to do some of the April 8th ones.
Or you won't.
Or we will all be gone because Quetzalcoatl will come. I don't even know what this all leads up to, honestly. Some event, because it's always, they are always planning an event, but there's never an actual belief of what the event is. So I don't know if like the world is ending or if Homeland Security is just going to like blow up a few strategically placed pillars. I don't know. They didn't really get into that with the conspiracy theories. Just all of the connections.
They don't have time to know.
Because they're too busy mathing out the number of days between dates.
I can guarantee you they're not eating at home. My conspiracies were fun, and they were not that far. But like when I was reaching during my conspiracies, mine, by the way, the one that I made up specifically, I wasn't really reaching. Like, this makes me feel a lot better.
Somebody sat down. I guess I should be fair. There could be mental illness here that I should know. Maybe it's not their fault. I will follow up with all the conspiracy theories that did not happen during the eclipses for our next episode.
I love it. I don't love it. I feel
Crazy's
sad.
Ruining our good conspiracy theories.
I feel sad for all of us.
Jessica's so disappointed, you guys.
I'm just done. I'm done.
Crazy people are ruining conspiracy theories for Jessica.
Haunted Disney rides and the Denver airport and the Titanic not being the Titanic. And actually, my very first 3 conspiracy theory things were all things, the conspiracy theories that I thought were the most, like, palatable, that I could almost believe.
Right.
Like, Bermuda Triangle, okay, the Titanic being the Olympic, absolutely. I could absolutely see someone doing that for insurance money, and they had a plan to rescue all these people. These ones are just those like I'm picturing that guy in front of a board with all the yarn connected.
Yes.
And he looks wild. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm done.
This has been Dungeons of Dopamine.
Dungeons of Dopamine. We're storing it. It's all ours. Great. Now there's going to be a conspiracy theory about that.
That's actually what we're using the eclipse for. The power of the eclipse will steal the dopamine
that we've created.
Yes, and bring it back to us so we can store it in our dungeon. That was good. Thank you.
Oh, good. Oh, well, yeah. No. And this is Dungeons and Dopamine Podcast.
You can listen to us anywhere you stream podcasts and on YouTube while you're on your road trip to see the eclipse.
You can also, before you leave, you can support us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/dungeonsdopamine.
You can also find us on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Insta, and Reddit to send us those eclipse pictures.
And you can reach out to us on any of those, plus at dungeonsdopamine@yahoo.com to tell us how disappointed you are in all of this.
Dungeons and Dopamine is edited and published by Argyle Pigeon Productions.
Nailed it. Yes. Thank you all so much. I hope you all
survive the apocalypse. The eclipse apocalypse.
If you see me, I need a hug. Okay.
Jessica's disappointed in humanity.
Thank you. We love you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.